At one point in time, Mark Prior looked like he was on a track to becoming the best pitcher in the world. He was considered by some as the greatest college pitcher of all time, and out of college, he signed for the highest draft signing bonus ever at that time. From there, as a 22-year-old pitcher in the heart of the steroid era, Mark Prior finished top 3 in Cy Young voting. Scouts raved about his perfect mechanics, and it was clear he had all the talent in the world, but then it all came crashing down. The date is October 14th, 2003. The Cubs are just one win away from their first NL pennant since 1945, and on the mound is their 23-year-old ace, Mark Prior. This game should be the coronation of a great team headlined by a dominant trio of young arms. Instead, it will be over a decade before the Cubs come this close to the World Series again, and Mark Prior will never be the same. Let's take a look at how he got to this point. The top of the 2001 MLB draft board featured a pair of elite prospects. On one end, you had Joe Mauer, a high school catcher who was committed to Florida State. On the other end, you had Mark Prior, a college pitcher from USC. There's a long lineage of elite arms to come out of SC. Hall of Famers Randy Johnson and Tom Seaver, as well as Cy Young winner Barry Zito, are some of the great pitchers to come out of Southern Cal. In college, though, Mark Prior was better than all of them. Taking a look at Prior's stats from his junior year at SC, they are pretty absurd. Out of all the stats that the NCAA kept a leaderboard for in 2001, Mark Prior was in the top 5 of all of them except for saves. For his efforts, Prior swept pretty much every major award in college baseball, winning the Golden Spikes, the Dick Howser Trophy, the Baseball America Player of the Year, and the Rotary Smith Award. He entered the draft, according to ESPN, as the consensus top player in the 2001 draft, to go along with arguably the best college pitcher ever. When the draft came, the Minnesota Twins, who had the number 1 pick, ended up going with the cheaper local high school option in Joe Mauer. Mauer was a pretty incredible prospect in his own right. Not only was he the number 1 pick in baseball, he was also a 5-star quarterback recruit too. Ultimately, the Twins' price concerns ended up being pretty well founded, as Mark Prior signed for over $10 million. At pick number 2, the Cubs were more than happy to take the phenom when he fell into their lap. After making just 9 minor league starts, it was time for Mark Prior to make his major league debut.
The future is now for Mark Prior and his fans in Chicago. Perhaps the most heralded prospect for the Cubs since, well, frankly, Kerry Wood in 1998.
The 2-2 pitch to Giles.
Yeah.
Strike 3 called on the 1-2 pitch by Prior.
Oh,
curveball called, strike 3. Welcome to Wrigley Field, Mark Prior. Prior delivers again. Curve got him swinging. Game. 1-2 pitch, swing and a miss, strike, and the 1-2 pitch. Swung on and missed, strike 3. That's number 10. That's not a bad total for a debut.
In just his 10th professional start and his big league debut, Mark Prior struck out 10 Pittsburgh Pirates over 6 innings. This debut was electrifying, and it gave a glimpse of just how good Mark Prior could be. Throughout the rest of his rookie season, Prior continued to give flashes of just how good he could one day become. In just 19 starts, Prior was able to get himself up to 7th in NL Rookie of the Year voting, and by WAR, he should have been higher than even that. Having done this all just 1 year removed from college, things set up perfectly for Mark Prior to have a breakout year in 2003. Coming into the 03 season with an extra year of development and even higher expectations, breakout is exactly what Mark Prior did. 22-year-old Prior was named an All-Star with numbers that put him firmly in the Cy Young conversation. He finished just 10th in the NL in innings pitched after getting injured on this brutal collision. Still, Prior finished 2nd in the majors in strikeouts, only behind his Cubs teammate Kerry Wood. Aside from his innings pitched, all of the numbers on your screen are top 10 numbers in all of baseball that year. Further, if you look at WAR, Mark Prior led all pitchers in the major leagues in Fangraphs WAR. You could at least make the case that Prior was the best pitcher in all of MLB that year. Even if he isn't the clear-cut number 1 guy, he's still up there in the same era as 2 future first-ballot Hall of Famers in their prime in Pedro and Doc Halladay. When it came to Cy Young voting, Prior ended up finishing in 3rd. The winner was Eric Gagne, who was in the middle season of a stretch where he converted 84 consecutive saves, which to this day is still a major league record. Jason Schmidt in 2nd place put up very similar numbers first to Pryor with 37 less strikeouts and ended up edging out Pryor for the second place spot. In third, we had Mark Pryor, who led the Cubs into the playoffs alongside Kerry Wood. Pryor and Wood made the cover of Sports Illustrated this season under the title Chicago Heat. Combined, the two flamethrowers struck out more hitters than anybody in baseball. The two finished 1-2 in both strikeouts and strikeouts per 9 that year. Pryor, Wood, and other Cubs young stud Carlos Zambrano combined for 45 of the Cubs' 88 wins. The Cubs trio entered the playoffs looking like they could hold up against any other top 3 in baseball.
Electricity is pulsing through Wrigley Field. You've got two ball clubs, one the upstart and one the proud Atlanta Braves. I mean, they're always here. This is a little bit of a new thing for these Chicago Cubs and for Mark Pryor, and not for Greg Maddux, the veteran master. He's been here so many times before, Joe.
Well, all the talk has been about Mark Pryor, but guess what? Greg Maddux can't take second billing to anyone. He's a future first ballot Hall of Famer.
And he struck him out. Hard stuff. Everybody on their feet. Sheffield at second. Chipper Jones at first, ready to go on anything. 2 down. Struck him out. It's cool. The wind is blowing in from left. And a curveball that steps in there. Freezes Castilla. Strike 3. Struck him out. The high hard one up around the eyes of Forcal. Strike 3. Again, the breaking ball. Randall Simon plays behind the runner at first, Lopez. And that is a pop-up. Grudgelotic. The Cubs have gone ahead in this series, 2-1 on a masterpiece from the young Mark Pryor, a 2-hitter against the Braves.
23-year-old Mark Pryor went into his first playoff start against the #1 scoring offense in the NL, and to put it simply, he dominated. It took him 133 pitches, but Pryor was able to throw a complete game. He struck out 7, giving up just 1 run in a win that put the Cubs a win away from advancing to the NLCS. 2 days later, 8 innings of 1-run ball from Kerry Wood was enough to lead the Cubs to a win in Game 5. Awaiting them in the NLCS was the Florida Marlins. Pryor got the ball in Game 2 of this series and pitched well enough to win against a pretty middle-of-the-road Marlins offense. The next time Pryor took the mound, it was Game 6, Cubs leading 3-2, Mark Pryor with a chance to send the Cubs to the World Series. Out of the gate in this game again, Mark Pryor was dominant.
Struck him out, fastball away.
This should be the part of the video where I put up the graphic with Mark Pryor's stat line from this game. This should be the part of the video where I show you just how incredible Mark Pryor's performance was, but instead, it's the part where things go horribly wrong.
Again in the air, down the left field line. Reaching into the stands and couldn't get it, and he's livid with a fan.
That's awfully close to fan interference right there. The umpire's all over it. That is very, very close.
And that's a Cub fan who tried to make that catch.
Why?
Into left field, a base hit by Rodriguez. He is delivered again. The air scores to make it a 3-1 ball game. The tying run is aboard. 1-2. Ground ball in the hole is short. And by Gonzalez, and everybody's safe.
This one went downhill real fast. At the time where Luis Castillo hit that foul ball, Mark Prior had thrown 112 pitches and had dominated the game. He'd given up no runs in just 4 hits over 7 1/3. Fast forward just 7 pitches later and Mark Prior's final line included 5 runs. After dropping Game 6, the Cubs again got a lead in Game 7 on the back of a Kerry Wood home run, and again they blew that lead in Game 7. Just like that, after holding leads in both Game 6 and 7, the Cubs got sent home. Entering into the offseason though, the Cubs looked like they were primed to get right back in that position again. In reality though, things were never really the same in Chicago. Both their record and place in the Central slowly fell, and their ace fell right along with it. Mark Prior never got back to his 2003 level as the injury bug ravaged him big time. Prior started each of the 2004, 5, and 6 campaigns on the IL. With those IL trips, there came a large drop in his velocity. As an opponent put it, Prior wasn't throwing as hard as he always threw. When I faced Prior the first time in my life, he was throwing 96, 97. Today he was throwing 91, 94, and he was a little wild. It might take him a while to be the Prior everyone's seen. In reality, that Prior that everyone had seen back in 2003 never truly came back. After putting up an ERA over 7 in 2006, Mark Prior never threw another big league pitch again. His big league career ended after his age 25 season, just 3 seasons removed from him finishing top 3 in Cy Young voting. With that, we've got to ask, where did all of this go wrong? The easy answer, of course, is injuries. Taking a look at Prior's stints on the IL, he spent at least part of every season of his big league career unable to play. A lot of those injuries were shoulder or elbow related, which certainly had an effect on his drop in velo. A couple of those injuries were freak incidents. His only time on the IL in 03 was when he got injured on this collision running the bases. Another time he compound fractured his elbow on a comeback line drive. Those injuries are not what most people talk about when they talk about the injuries of Mark Prior, however. During that 03 season, Prior's manager, Dusty Baker, got a lot of fire for the workload that he gave to Prior and Kerry Wood. These are Prior's pitch counts over all of his starts after he came off the IL. After his first start back, Prior didn't have another start under 100 pitches for the rest of 2003. This was a guy who was just coming off an injury. His average over that stretch was a little over 118 pitches. That's an insane workload down the stretch for a guy who is in his first full big league season and coming off an injury. Perhaps the reason Baker felt comfortable sending Prior out there for all those pitches was Prior's mechanics. There was a lot of talk about the idea that Prior had perfect mechanics. His motion was really smooth, really clean, and seemed to be in really good rhythm. What they didn't know was the fatal flaw that some believe led to Prior's injury problems. When Prior's arm would come up, his elbow came above his shoulders, creating what is known as the inverted W. As this article from Yahoo puts it, there is some debate about how big of a problem the inverted W is. What we do know is that the inverted W is thought to lead to timing problems and some serious strain on the elbow and shoulder. What we also know is that a lot of Prior's injuries throughout his career were elbow and shoulder related. I think there's a lot of parallels you can draw between the careers of Mark Prior and Steven Strasburg. Strasburg, like Prior, was a college pitcher from Southern California who was considered one of, if not the best pitching prospect ever. He broke Prior's record with his contract out of the draft, and like Prior, he was in the big leagues very quickly. Both guys had electric debuts, lots of hype, and both guys had injuries early in their careers that derailed them from reaching their full potentials. Strasburg had the same mechanical flaw as Mark Prior, and like Prior, he suffered from shoulder and elbow injuries that sapped a lot of his velo. The biggest difference between the two guys was honestly just their timing. By the time Strasburg came up and got hurt, teams had already learned from their mistakes with guys like Mark Prior. Where Prior kept getting thrown out there time and time again after he got hurt, the Nats shut Strasburg down, limited his innings, and now he's a multi-time All-Star and World Series MVP. Ironically enough, it was the year after Strasburg that Prior finally got his ring as the pitching coach coach of the 2020 Dodgers. Pryor stayed in baseball after his playing career ended. He doesn't seem bitter about how things went down. In an article he wrote for Sports Illustrated's The Cauldron, Pryor discusses things. He says that he hasn't blamed Dusty Baker for what happened to him, and aside from failing to win a World Series, he doesn't regret anything that happened during the 03 season. He goes on to add that he would strongly disagree with anyone who thinks that Baker was at fault for what happened to him or Kerry Wood. Pryor was more focused with the freak injuries, the base running collision, and the line drive off his elbow. Pryor says that he thinks those things may have muddied the waters with his injuries later in his career. More importantly though, Pryor says that he wouldn't change anything and doesn't regret where he's at. Mark Pryor now has the privilege of being the pitching coach for as stacked of a staff as you will find. And for that 2020 team, he will forever be a World Series champion.